Hey, beautiful humans. What's going on? I think you're really going to like this podcast. It's a little bit of a special one, though, because I got to tell you the backstory. This won't even make sense. So I met this man in 2000 and I'm going to say like 13, maybe 14, at a party in India. Okay. And I just knew right away this guy was wise as a motherfucker. And we just started talking, and he mentioned he had a book on Tantra, the Rocky Horror Tantra book, all about, tantric sex, but as a spiritual path. I could just sense that this guy was legit. He gave me a copy of his book. I read it. It was legitimate. And not long after I went full down the spiritual rabbit hole. And only when I had my really, really big awakening in New York City, then I had this urge to talk to someone who, I could talk to about that. And I had a phone call with him, just a private call, but that really, really helped me a lot. Just kind of, put things together and be like, process the whole thing. So he's just a really high level dude, and he lives out there in South Africa, and that's what he is. He's a full-time, spiritual enlightenment guru. I didn't even realize how high level he was originally, but he's up there. So so I just wanted to talk to him anyways about my about my own personal experiences. And I just thought, let's get him on a call and just go super, super into the stuff that I'm personally just want to talk about and I'm curious about. So it may be a little bit different because I wasn't really trying to structure it as like it was more just, bam, I just went straight in. You know what I mean? I just went straight in, was like, hey, this. So I hopefully let me know in the comments what you think, seriously, because I don't know. I'm at this point, I'm just like exploring what's exciting to me, and I hope other people like it. If they do, that's wonderful. And if you don't, tough shit. There's other things out there for you. But do let me know. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's just a conversation between two people about waking the fuck up. So there it is. So enjoy, and let me know on YouTube what you think. Oh yeah, and also this is the first time I've really done one of these. Maybe the second time I've ever done one of these over internet, because we had no choice. I really wanted to talk to him. I thought you guys would benefit, and I can't fly to South Africa right now, so yeah. So the internet once in a while cuts out a little bit. It's not too bad. You can definitely you can get 98% of the conversation. So it is what it is. We did the best we can. So enjoy.
Are you ready to get woke? Welcome to the Woke as F*** podcast with your host, Alex Lazarev.
Okay. So here's the big topic, and it'll lead to a very, very big question in the end. I think it's going to be interesting. So the big topic will be integrating really profound spiritual experiences and how to sort of go back into life when you realize none of it is actually real or actually happening. But we'll get to that. So the last time we spoke, which was actually a private call, but I'd had a really big pop, and it went on for quite some time, and it was kind of changed everything. I was never really the same after that. But eventually, it took months actually for some semblance of the ego to return and me to sort of start behaving again like I believed I was some person, but it wasn't a deep belief in the idea of a person. And then this last summer. There's no real words are kind of impossible for these type of things, as you know, but the short version of it would be I was having a conversation with my spiritual teacher, and the realization, it was during a conversation, and I was just talking about how I was very excited, and the night before I was doing comedy and being very funny, and it was like spiritual comedy, and I was very much in alignment. And I said to him, as we were talking, I just said, yeah, I've been afraid before to really shine my light fully in the world, because I was afraid of if I really was fully myself, I would be killed. And he just looked at me and said, we've all been killed lots of times. And then I said to him, yeah, I'm not afraid of that anymore. And what, and then there was a sort of, I started speaking. And at some point during this little thing I'm about to say, it wasn't really me speaking, but a force speaking through me. But basically what I said was, I'm not afraid. Yeah, I'm not afraid to die anymore. And the thing is, I cannot be killed because I am.
I am everyone who has ever lived in this world. I'm everyone who lives here now, and I'm everyone who will ever live here. And whether I have to be here 100 years or 500, I will not leave this realm until all my brothers are liberated, because I am forever. But it wasn't me speaking anymore. So there was this insane power speaking through me. We were looking at each other. And as I had this absolute realization of just like, it's not that I didn't know before, but it was just such an absolute like, oh, I'm here to help everybody, and I'm it. I immediately felt this absolute terror rise up, and I knew I was dying. And I looked at Paul in the eyes and I said, I'm dying. And he just looked at me with love in his eyes and he said, it's okay. So then what happened is I apparently passed out. I immediately dropped like a sack. He caught me and put me on the floor. On my end, what I went through was I knew I was dying, and I was for a second confused because I know I'd attained the realization, the big one. And so I went, well, it's weird that I'm dying because I just realized I'm immortal, but that's a weird one. And I kind of accepted it right away because I've been through this before. So I just said, okay, well, I'm going to God. I'm not afraid. So I trust in that. And I was literally waiting to go to the light. I was just like waiting to go to the light. And then nothing happens. And I'm like looking, I'm just like, okay, any second now, going to the light. Here we go. And a few more moments goes by. And eventually I wake up super, super dizzy and disorientated. And I was so convinced I had left the world. I thought I was on the other side and he was there greeting me. I love this guy. He's like my spiritual father. So I thought he was the one showing me around. So the first thing out of my mouth was, am I dead? Did I die? And he just said, no, the old you died. And what he saw on his end, before I explain what happened after, what he saw on his end was, as I collapsed, like a cloud went up from my body, and he saw Pachamama scoop up and take that energy back into the earth. And so our theory is that was like we're given this ego mask as we're born, and then the planet takes it back when we're done with it. And as I let out a scream that was like a death scream. It was crazy. Like people came because they thought something really bad had happened. So it was a death scream. It was it was pretty intense. And so when I woke up, I was super dizzy, and then eventually I was like shocked that I was still here. And then as I stood up, the closest way to explain it was that it's like I'd woken up out of a nightmare, and there was only everything that is. It was permanent. It was like, it was just, I was all of it. It was like, there was absolutely, not only there was not a person, and this was for about 12 hours, there was absolutely nobody. The idea of a person was completely gone, and it was just all that is forever, like no past, no future, just all of it continuously forever. And that was myself. And that was always the truth. And it was like the idea that there was ever a person was absolutely gone. And that went on for fully, like literally unable to speak, because I'm just in the glory of like just looking at trees, and it was all God, staring into people's eyes as they were God, like breathing for the first time, like every breath, just like I never had breathed before, like I had never seen before. Like I was completely, like I woke up out of a very, very bad dream, and there was only, everything was me. It was all God. I had the feeling I needed to go in the lake, so I went for a swim, and I could feel all the nature and everything looking at me. It was all myself. And I came out, and it was beyond description. It was completely like beyond anything. It was just ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous. And I'm a big fan of muscle testing. And at one point I was sitting there, and it's funny, the thought came up somewhere that was like, shit, I'm never going to do comedy. I'm never going to travel, because I couldn't, in that state, I couldn't get on a plane. I couldn't do anything. I could just sit there in bliss as all that is. And I actually thought, my life is ruined. There's nothing I'm going to do. I'm useless. But also I thought, well, it could be worse. If that's really my destiny, to sit fully enlightened on a hill and people just come, that's okay, I guess. It's not what I had planned. I thought I was going to do things, but that's okay. And so many things. So I would just stare at people, and it was again, there was nothing to, I could talk if I really made the effort, but what's the point? It was just, I'm everything forever. What am I going to say? What is there to say? So for about 12 hours that went on. And he walked me to my, it was an outside, big, huge structure, like a tent, where I'm staying at the end of that day. And he said, are you okay to sleep here? And I said, yeah, I'd rather be here than in the big house with you weirdos. And he laughed, two of them. And I was relieved. I was like, oh, you laughed. I'm still funny. And Paul looked at me and said, yeah, you're still going to be you, just better. And I was like, okay. And I tried to sleep, and every time I fell asleep, I woke up in absolute terror, like screaming like a banshee. So I couldn't sleep that night. And then again, the next day, same thing was happening. And he said he went through the same thing before when he went through death. And he said it's basically the all the fear in the body of separation, the separation from God, all the trauma at that level of vibration, it has to leave. So it exits the body. So he gave me some mantras like, I am, God is, I am, God is. And I just was sleeping, and he was doing energy work. He said a lot of angels and crazy beings were around that whole night. So I slept next to him and his wife in the bed that night as I woke up screaming. So that happened a few times, but it got better and better. Eventually I was able to sleep for an hour and a half, and then it was okay after that. And then for weeks, it was like, I was muscle testing. So yeah, so one time during the experience, I looked at him and I said, muscle test me now. And he said, there's nobody here. And I said, well, I'm still talking. There must be somebody, try it. And he muscle tested it. So on the scale of awakening, it was 1,000. That was the full big pop. That was the one. That was like, there was no, yeah, it was crazy. And then after that, I was checking myself. So I was in the 900s and 800s, and I eventually stopped around in the high 700s. And now I fluctuate between high 700s, low 700s, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, it was the big one. And yeah, there's no more there hasn't been any seeking of anything. There's no answers. I'm not looking for any answers at all. I think that was the end of the search for me. 5 years of searching, and pretty hardcore. And that was the end of that part of my life. And now, and the reason I really wanted to talk, because for months after, like I was in a super, super high, and I went around traveling, and miracles were happening at my talks. Like people would have awakenings. I would just talk, and people would just realize things and just pop. And it was really fucking crazy. And like people they couldn't get up, and I'm just like, what's the matter? And people would just say things like, oh, everything's bullshit. It's all love. All my mind, everything I was worried about, it's all not real. It's bullshit. But I said, yeah. Then I would test people, and they came to my talk calibrating in the high 400s, and then they're already at 515. So they went over into the love. You're familiar with Hawking scale, right? Of consciousness, you must be.
I get
Not
the
so
idea
much.
of it, I think.
Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, it's basically a big. So just crazy shit was happening. And then for a few months I was traveling in the States, and it was stressful, and a lot of shit happened, and it kind of wore me down. And I sort of got back into relatively, and then this is the part that I want to talk about. Then I went into this state of sort of like complete detachment from all of it. And I've been stuck, and I think I'm exiting now, but for 3 months, maybe more, 3-4 months, it was this state of just like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of anything? Like, I know I'm infinite. I know I'm just all that is having this experience. It makes no difference whether I get hit by a bus tomorrow, because I'm still all that is. It can never change. What I am can never change. So there was no point. And before, I had this real drive to like change the world, to wake people up and all this. And then after this, certain things have become abundantly clear. Like there's nothing to change, and everyone will go through what I went through. Everyone will wake up, because consciousness can only do one thing, which is evolve until full enlightenment. So everybody will reach full enlightenment. It's completely inevitable. Nothing can stop it. No one could stop evolution or what God is. So there's nothing for me to do. Everything is perfect as it is. It always was, and it always will be. And so as a person, it's like, what the fuck is the point of me doing anything? I might as well sit at home and watch cartoons. So it's a bit of a dichotomy, experience the ultimate. And yet as a soul, I know it's my passion to come and help people and wake up, and it's very exciting. But I went through this very long period of could not be bothered to do shit. So I really wanted to talk to you and be like, is this normal? Do people go through this? What the fuck? And now I'm coming out of it, and I'm starting to enjoy life, and I'm getting excited. But for 4 months, I really thought, I was almost at a point where I thought, I don't care if I live, or I'm ready to leave. There's nothing because I know where I'm going after this. I'm going back to source. So what's the point? I woke up. That was the game. What am I doing here? What's the point? I really didn't give a shit on some level, but I knew deep down, this must be a phase. You're going to be okay. Just relax. You're here to enjoy life. And now I'm starting to enjoy again a little bit. So anyway, so that's basically what happened. So I just wanted, because I know more and more people are going to be going through these experiences. So that's question one. Did you have the same thing, like a total fuck off indifference, can't be fucked to do anything after you had I know you've had multiple big ones, but yeah, I'll bring it to you about this crazy stuff.
There's quite a few things going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, the first of it, a Satori that whacks you for 12 hours straight is very hardcore. You know, it certainly changes lives. It can discombobulate completely as well. It's quite a shock. And of course, you getting it in a context where it's not like you're a prepared monk and a group of monks being carefully moved through a sequence of experiences that's going to trigger the mind into this, and it's very held, and you're expecting it, and you've been as forewarned as possible, and all those things. You don't have any of those old school advantages. And hence, immediately after, what you got to experience, that rough night.
2 of those.
Ah, okay, 2 rough nights. Well, for me, a similar-ish part of the journey took 3 heavy journeys into it to get through the same kind of territory that you had to clear there. Between the transcendent space in death, where you merge with the oneness that's permanently there, of course, and sort of fizz back, you know, on the way there in the death journey, there is a bunch of stuff to go through. And the stuff that blocks people up the most, and the stuff that's most essential to go through, is all those, right down to the childhood fears, the demons you conjured to terrify yourself as a child, the under the beds, I call them. Because I remember going to my door and like jumping onto the bed to like stay away from that terrible feeling of what could be under the bed. And so the Satori took you, like you could say, straight to the source, right past all that. But you don't get there without experiencing, without letting go of, being confronted with and letting go of your self-created fears. And those, of course, are our most scary ones. You know, it's not like they're lighter because they're self-created. So hence the mantra he gave you, helping you to get you through. The classic for that one would be, all that I see is my creation. You know, but you still had to face, to so to speak, have that 12-hour Satori. You have to have crashed through that stuff properly. Hence, you got there beforehand without, you know, so the flexible thing, because it's not, is time. So you got it just to date. You had those 2 rough nights on the way out instead of on the way in. It's like you still had to cover that territory.
But it's interesting because I wasn't consciously, that I'm aware of, working through things. Something was happening, but I don't know what it was. All I know is I was going to sleep. I trusted in doing the mantra, and I woke up in terror. But eventually, it went away. So,
well, there's a kindness that kind of happens with these things. Is some of those things, you know, you go through them again at your deathbed later as well, you know, and every journey into death. Until their face is finished. But the thing is, that which, how to say, several aspects of you are really alive, obviously all together, flowing, really integrated in such moments. And from, you could say, the higher aspects end, there's things that you pass through. It can prevent you knowing, just blank. Hence it happens in sleep. Hence you wake up from screaming from a dream and you don't have recall into the dream. Like if that's happening, basically your higher aspect is psychologically buffering you, which is a fine thing. You know, because between here and past what the Tibetans call the bardos, the sort of zone of between here and the source, there's a hell of a lot there. And that's a whole nother, you know, you'll have various Satoris into aspects of that and so on. But to bounce right across to the source, go deep immersion into that. And yeah, I mean, I've had it happen with a few students. And, sort of the one that comes to mind particularly was about 4 hours. And she'd already had good drilling on going through the demons. So it didn't have, she was more prepared than you were in that way. But I mean, that doesn't help a hell of a lot. It's still very sudden, still a shock. The motivationless thing you referred to later, 2 aspects going there. The one thing I hear is the voice, and another thing you're slightly threatened with, and well done, and it's good that it hasn't, it didn't go with it, is a separation of what you can call higher aspects and more where you live. Yeah, that's some of the things you've said, and is the higher aspect really switched on? And where there's this risk of separation, how to say, it can be okay if things separate, if it separates, and you've got it like a separate voice in yourself. It can be totally workable, but it can also be a hell of a problem. It depends on various things. You're probably okay, but from the higher aspect position, yes, indeed. Let's return to source. There is no point. That time you spent just going, wait, I just want to sit right on top of the mountain, and that's that. And you can see, if you look at especially the Eastern traditions, there's a whole lot of teachers and masters in history who've done exactly that. You can recognize them by they organized their whole community and their whole ashram to just support them being in as deep a blissful of silence as they can manage at any point. And that's lacquer for everyone to support them doing that, because they all enjoy the vibe of it. But one can, I mean, I personally don't rate it a lot higher than circus tricks, but then I'm harsh and judgmental. But and it's useful. It is useful. So it doesn't move people hugely, but it gives them a taste that can be very encouraging.
You mean being around somebody who's in such a state?
You feel someone like that, you feel their energy a little bit. It can be very encouraging. If you take it in that sense, it's really useful. It's a fine thing. But you can see the urge to arrange that, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just, fuck, there's no, all of the suffering. I mean, there's a reason they call it liberation. It was just like all the suffering is all attached to this idea that you're this person. As soon as you realize you're infinite and you're not the person, what suffering is there? It's like, I wanted to make a YouTube video called, here's the solution to your problem. Stop wanting things. There's nothing to want. You're already everything you could be, which is everything. There's nothing you could possibly get that could ever change what you are, which is all that is forever. You know what I mean? But I think people would just think I'm crazy.
Right.
But there's
that now, when I've seen separation happen really and happen unhappily, is when that higher aspect, the voice that has that thought, when that higher aspect, it can have, you could say, a great level of disdain for the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, and yes, the objection to what the Taoists call calamities. But the Taoists also tell us to celebrate those calamities, because the body's the very source of all these calamities. Without the body, you can't even have calamities.
Mm-mm.
And calamities doesn't mean just the unpleasant, it's all of sensation, all of experiencing. So, there's a dance there, but you can see that the hope and what saves you from separation is that you've had some good time of seeking, of journeying, of questioning. And what that time does, even if, it doesn't really matter how sort of successful or advancing or meritorious in the Buddhist context or whatever that part of path is. But just having some time with it means that as higher aspects come online, and especially that one, the top one, It's from your energy living up to it, so to speak. If you should encounter, and unfortunately old Tantra especially, and I tell you there's relics in the modern world, and they're so powerful, some of them still bloody work. By relics, I mean ancient practices. 90% of people that'll do them, nothing looks like complete nonsense. Someone who that particular technique can really trick. The nastiest one I've seen was one lovely young lady who went off to India and encountered a school that still had some real full power old magic for her. And instead of just having a stirring experience, her higher aspect got absolutely activated, could take over the body, could be the voice. This, and it was quite separate from her living. She was too young. She hadn't lived nearly to the capacity to reach that. So the distance from her to that was large. There was a big gap. You can feel a continuousness with it. She had a gap of that. And that quality of disdain for the flesh is so bad that when that aspect's in line, it can just stop her bathing for weeks, because why should it? Why should she? And why should she even bother to eat? And when it engages with people, if she's in the aspect and it engages with, it's horrific. It's it's like something cold and dead looking at you from beyond. The high aspect is not necessarily all pretty and transcendent. You know, that disdain for the flesh can really come through.
That's interesting.
And like interaction, you know, it regards every being as so fucking stupid that it doesn't engage in discussion or argument. It just keeps repeating the last insistence. That's it. I want to do this. I want to do this. Because eventually the stupid ape piece of flesh thing is going to agree. I'm cold. Yeah. It can be that bad if it's really separated out. Yeah. And if it's not lived to, as in you can feel that aspect of you, what keeps it human is that you still feel your flesh and you still feel your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, that thing can become a very ugly thing.
So you're saying
when that separation thing goes well, you see it all over the spiritual world. A lot of people get separated. Mostly it goes well. You get Rantha. You get someone channeling something.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's their highest aspect. So to wherever they're living, they can only talk about it and relate to it in terms of symbols their mind already has.
Mm-hmm.
So they come up with their best symbols for very far away, somehow vaguely benevolent and very wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever you got in your mind for very far away, very benevolent, or somehow benevolent and very wise, that will be what the voice you hear, the face you give it,
mm-hmm.
if it's separate from you. So that explains the 99.9% of channeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's someone thinks an old apothecary, what you call it, you know, Hermes Magistus or something, you know, they're channeling him. Or nowadays people, of course, it's aliens or transdimensional.
Well, channeling has very little, if nothing, to do with enlightenment.
No, it's a higher aspect turned on. It's worth listening to because it's a higher aspect. Highest aspect of someone, you know, shit, you can hear some awesome shit from Rantha.
Yeah. And I've been channeling some Syrian brothers of mine for years.
It's her highest aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's separate from her. It takes a glass of wine, in her case, to kick the difference. Huh?
But you're saying what you were talking about before, where you could go to the highest, which is, I mean, that's got to be, I don't know. I know there's always more and more levels, right? We're never finished.
No, I'm talking about the highest of you. Earlier I was talking about in terms of where you go or what your perception opens and reveals to you. You know, like going to that depth of Satori, you know, that's more than a momentary flash of light in the darkness that reveals the territory. You know, that's not a lightning strike. That's an arc that burns for 12 hours. That's
well, I mean, I was in a, I mean, for weeks I was in some level of like a level where if someone were to put a shotgun to my head and say I'm going to pull the trigger in 5 seconds, I'd say, go ahead. What does that change? You know, it's just you're in such a knowing and feeling that you're all of it. It would change nothing about what I am. And eventually, after months, it's like I still know that, but I'm more just, okay, it's so semi-normal. You know, it's funny because for a while I couldn't even listen to people because all their talking was just ego bullshit. It was so boring. It's just like not interesting at all. It's just people driveling on about shit that's like stupid egoic human stuff that's completely irrelevant to me. But eventually, as as I went from those heavenly realms, now it's like, oh yeah, no, I could talk about that. That's kind of interesting. You know what I mean? Less so than before, but I can still sort of be in the person and do the things. But I know it's all just I'm playing a character. We're all just playing a character. Like I can't take any of it very seriously.
I still do some things deliberately to keep in touch with that.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
I have a couple of old friends who know me from long ago and have very firm projections on me about who I was then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice to go into that space, have all those assumptions, and relate to them in terms of all those assumptions.
Yeah.
Like be that for a while. It's kind of it's humbling.
Yeah, I have another friend, another one of my spiritual teachers, and she said the same thing. She's like, yeah, I have some friends that are wonderful and I've known them for a long time, and I can't tell them about any of the experiences we're talking about. They wouldn't make any sense. So I go in and I have a chat and whatever, and that's fine, and it's fun to relate on that level once in a while. But for a while there, man, I'm telling you, there was no point talking to anybody. I was just like, what the fuck is everyone is just sleep. They have no idea what's going on. And they're just caught up in all this stuff. It's all a dream. And they're worried about all this stuff you're in a dream. What are you worried about? It's all a dream. It's not real. It's trippy.
Now watch out for the big mistake of so much of spirituality. You can really now see how that mistake arises. Is if you from there make the jump to, oh well, but I'm awake to it. Wouldn't it be fun if they were all awake to it? And how do I make them all awake to it? And yeah, in a sense, yes, that is the very sacred urge of the Bodhisattva, and I definitely don't speak against it. On the other hand, if you have a little more trust in existence, they are what they are while they are that. They move at the pace they move at. You have to acknowledge there is a vast difference between the chi they have brought to their lives, that they have had, or that they have been blessed with, and the chi that you have been blessed or cursed with, that has been running through your life. It's almost like every life volume control on it, and it's a blessing curse because, life is a delight and an agony. So it's just about the volume control. How much do you take on? And I know enough of your history to know that you take on a lot. So if your chi, urges you to take on a lot, and you take on a lot, and you have a high volume control thing going up there, then you get to hit the big volumes. And at the high volumes, so to speak, these truths reveal. And you may think it's just your own understanding, but if you do a little quick examination, a little quick test backwards, if you consider any major realization you've had, and then you consider yourself 2 weeks before that realization, and then you consider what's the perfect teaching, perfect video I could record, that then you could play to me back then, play back to yourself 2 weeks before you had that realization, that would prepare you for the realization, help you with the realization, bring it on quicker or something, and you'll admit, there's fuck all I could have said.
Yeah.
Now, admit too, if there was a student who could get that in the context of being a lesson, if there's a student who could get your realization in the context of it being a lesson, you would be the ideal student for it. Because you're going to get it in 2 weeks' time anyway. Yeah. So, and you couldn't reach him, your own mind, the mind you know best. So if you look at that, and that, also that realization of, yes, they are asleep, and not just asleep, they're fucking deeply asleep. The solid 90% of them. Then there's 8%, an itty bit more awake, and they're just awake to the extent where they see a bit of advantage. They see they can move a little quicker than the 90%, and so they take advantage, they move quicker, and they sell them encyclopedias or shares or whatever, and they take their money, they just take their energy, they predate on their energy. And then there's 2% who want bigger things than that, who are more greedy, like you. They want the truth of life, know what love really is, or, those big questions, the devya. They're interested in qualities we call the divine. And out of those 2%, then you get the berserk sort of fringe of that is the Tantra age. Because most of the devya, they progress best in what we call a monastic kind of setting. Group together, group progress, taking them all along faster than they could probably manage individually. And lessons and structures and teachings designed in that kind of way. So there's a progression to it. There's a layer of lies, and then the layers fall, and there's another revelation, and so on. But for some students, and this is your flavor, this is where you've got to get the difference between you and the rest of humanity here, I'm afraid. It's very disconnecting. Some students in that environment, in the monastic environment, they're not accelerated by being in the group. They feel the group as holding them back. They've read 2 books ahead of what the guy's teaching, and they want to ask questions about that, and they want to debate that. And they're not interested in if there's a veil of truth or something you're supposed to get before you move. No, they'd love to. They're all over, raiding the secret books in the library and trying to skip ahead and get over, they're all about that. So in other words, they don't play well with others. And that's now, in my specialization, we each get to have our area. But that's the area I work with, and I have to work just with that. And if I don't work just with that, if I work with people who are more suited to monastic stuff, I've got to be very careful to keep it to monastic kind of lessons. And I don't like doing that, and I'd rather just refer them if there's something workable of what they can go to there, I refer them to that. But it is, and that's good, strong seekers, but most of them, the monastic thing is the approach. And you've done it not the monastic way. You've done it the classically tantric approach. Like if you were in a monastery, they would have kicked your ass out. And that was you in the Buddhist world. That's how a tantrika got their start. They get started by being kicked out the monastery and having all the Buddhist stuff taken away from them. They're not allowed the Buddha anymore. No. You've got to have an old Hindu goddess, the fierce one. That's what.
So there's a big. It's very interesting. There's a big dichotomy. When I was in the ultimate, and there were no questions because I was the answer to all the questions I could come up with. So there was no questions. There was just all it is. Quite a thing. And so after that, I know certain things that are absolutely true, absolute truth that's beyond. I don't need to read it in a book. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It just is. It is nothing can ever change what is, ever. And it's spiritual reality. And our opinions. This is the thing, and people. It's a difficult one to put across to people. But our opinions as humans make absolutely no difference to the spiritual truth of what is. There's nothing, it makes no lick of difference. It's like not believing in gravity. Well, when you walk off that 20-story building, you're going to learn very quickly it's there. Doesn't matter what you believe about it. Completely irrelevant, our opinions as humans as to what truly is. Now, in that state, and it's a very simple point, isn't it? But it's one that they don't really bring up very often. It doesn't matter what you think at all. Reality is what it is.
Side effect of our male brain. This is how to say the way it shuts down so tight in the way is our linearity.
Linearity. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look
Yeah.
at the truth of it, it's more like if you look at a dartboard, or maybe even better, if you look at a globe from the top, but a globe with all the grid lines on from the top, similar to a dartboard. So there's lots of rings, and then as you get towards the center, there's also the divisions. But now, okay, different from a dartboard and a globe. A globe, those lines all come down as a point. But imagine if every block had to be the same size. So as you go in towards that pole, so to speak, towards the one point, there's fewer and fewer blocks in each ring. Yeah? Or you could say, if you look at an onion and you're going in, each ring is smaller, has less area to it than the ring before. So when you're right in by the core, there's maybe only one way you could cut that ring. You know, it's like not a ring, it's like a dot now. And that's the absolute essence of the center of things, or the center of the onion. And it's when it divides out, like when you move away from it and start getting perspective, it divides into very few parts. And you move further from it, it divides into more parts, and further from it, and you reach to where we are in the living and the being, and it's what they call the 10,000 things. It's one thing becomes two, becomes four, becomes eight, becomes the 10,000 things, they say. So it's all truth. And yes, the kernel of it is thus the central hub of the wheel. You could say that, but the wheel doesn't really turn right in the center of it. It's kind of dead still, just turning around. There's no actual turning happening. Even all the turning's an illusion. But yeah, but the whole wheel.
You're frozen there.
See, the point is the source of all existence. Yes, being in it also encompasses all of existence. All arises within it. Yes, there's a paradox, but the point is all arises within it. So all that arises is part of it, not discountable because of that, valuable because of that. Including the very most outer layers from which the center cannot be seen at all. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely the center too. And it's not divided. It is a oneness.
Yep.
So just as at the center, it looks like there's no concern for the outer layers. In the outer layers, it looks like there's no concern for the center.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be. All one. This love doesn't look like hate until you get it. You know, that the both of them are passion. You know, high intensity lust and a high intensity hate are the same thing. They feel the same in the body. The heart pumps the same way. The blood runs the same way. It's the same thing, but we polarize it and give it two names. Same thing with the most interior and the most exterior. The most inner truth of existence and the most outer is also the truth. It takes a stretch of the linearity right out into a whole circle. There are, of course, meditations to prepare your mind for this, which I didn't get in my training and you didn't get in your training.
You know, people
they're still quite good afterwards. The one in particular that's really good for that is Gautam Buddha. He laid it. It's Buddha. It's the Buddha. We call it the death meditation, and it's the simplest of techniques. I can tell you in 2 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds.
Allergy season has arrived.
There we go. That was just a corona.
Shoot.
Yeah. All right. What was I going to tell you before you sneezed?
Buddha's death meditation.
Maybe I should tell you. Yeah. So in essence, you move yourself intentionally in terms of inward, outward, opposite to your breath. That simple. Breath comes in, makes the body feel full. As it feels filled up the body, let that kind of squeeze you out. And let the breath hang us, the breath can get very slow and very extended and very long. And when the breath comes in, you can be out a long, long time. And then as the breath moves, the breath leaves, it makes space in you, dive in. And you just dive for the center of you, and you dive for the greatest expanse of out. Opposite your breath. That's simple.
So just feel into the body and then feel out, basically. So essentially feel into yourself on the in-breath, and then as you exhale, try and feel.
Put your attention.
Okay.
Yeah, that's your attention. As your breath leaves, your attention can go in. As your breath fills you up, your attention can go out.
Makes sense.
And if you've ever done anything with any DMT, you'll recognize the feeling after about maybe 20 minutes. That's why I do the breath meditation. It opens up the whole pineal gland thing.
Nice. That's not bad. So the dichotomy I was coming to, and that was a beautiful little rant there you did. It was very good, very nice. The dichotomy was in the ultimate, the absolute perfection of all that is just beyond. I mean, everything is absolutely exactly as it should be. Always, and it's forever, all of it. But, and here's the thing, literally, the next, maybe at the end of that day, I was kind of talking the end of the day and the days after, and it was the total liberation of any idea of like the person or any suffering. It was just gone. It was such a peace that it was just, there's no words to describe this peace. It's just nothing, everything is perfect. There's nothing you need to do. It's like, and yet you're in a body, but everything is just absolute perfection. And in the days afterwards, the only thing I can say, there wasn't really an I, because I was everything. The identification of self was all that is forever. So it's more accurate to say the only thing that I could contemplate doing with the body for the next 50 or 100 or whatever years I'm around was the liberation of all beings from suffering. There wasn't anything else to do because there was absolutely no suffering. What's that?
Nice.
There's nothing else. $1 billion, lots of women traveling. All these things were meaningless. It didn't matter. You could show up with a bank account. Go, hey, you're worth 150 billion. I'd say, for what? What's the point? Unless, of course, it was for the liberation of all beings. There was nothing else to conceive of doing with the rest of my time here other than help everybody wake up. Now, here's the interesting part. The interesting part is, before that, and maybe the other big awakening I had, I was very excited about waking people up because I was to some degree awake, and there was some ego there, and I really wanted to help everybody and wake up, and blah blah blah. And it was quite strong that I had that first big awakening, and I also wanted to wake. It was great. After this one, it's like right after, that's all there is to do, but it's the liberation of all beings from suffering. That was the very clear thing. And then as I descended from that, it's like, what's the fucking point of doing anything? Jesus, within months, it's like, who the fuck cares? There's no point to any of it. So it's quite a dichotomy. Everything is absolutely perfect. And yet I want to help other beings wake the fuck up. Although everything's perfect. And I know they're all going to wake up at their own pace anyway. And yet I incarnated to help people wake up and raise the consciousness. And that's my journey as a soul. But I know it's all fucking pointless. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. As you can see, there's like, that's fun.
Well, that's not so much a dichotomy as you're recording this, are you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you why. What we're going to talk about here is something I went hunting for in the literature because, from my own experience, one thing I did have the guidance of is I paid attention to a lot of the old Hindu stuff. And so a lot of that was useful to me in guidance. Little hints like, even if it is the big total one, you're going to take 10 years to get used to this. like if you want to teach, be very careful about what, stick really close to the truth, because you might reassess later in that kind of thing. But anyway, this territory of which you're talking there, that area, the dichotomy, that's usually what happens. But this is right through the whole literature. Certainly the old literature, and then my experience is a bit different, and yours is sounding very similar. So maybe it's a characteristic of how this phenomenon arises now. It could be that. But the old world sort of wisdom of it was you are one or the other pretty much immediately. You go, you feel the urge and you move in the direction of the Bodhisattva, which is the all beings before me approach. And or you go the other end of it, which is the Ahrat, which is really, what's the point of it? There's no point in trying to teach anyone anything. All is perfect as it is. There's nothing really here except maybe amuse myself. Maybe arrange just to have time and the bliss and the silence or whatever I enjoy of it. Like that. That's the Ahrat. The Ahrat's kind of like, I got my own realizations, dude, get your own, good luck. Or if you really want to try and make me a teacher, well, I've got nothing to teach, no method, no way. That flavor of expression, that's the Ahrat.
That's the thing. My best theory is that we well, it's not a theory either at this point. It's just kind of what is. We come down here because it's part of all it is, and it's an experience, an existence. All it is wants to experience all it is, and so there's basically the easiest way to explain to people is there is only one being in all of existence, and it is I am, and it's all of us. It's everything. That's the easiest way that from what I can try and explain it. There is actually only that, and I've 12 hours as that. I can tell you it's very real, and it's all it is. But the soul, the individual Sasha soul decided, and there is when we do have individual, souls, and we come in as people, and that soul gets its kicks waking people the fuck up. I go to worlds where everybody's asleep and I wake people up and raise the consciousness. But that's my kick. Other people might incarnate to say to be a good mom and have a family, or to have a crazy sex life, or to sail boats. And it's all good. God wants to do all of it. So my particular flavor is I like waking people the fuck up. But after that experience and knowing that everyone is me and there's no one to wake up, it's consciousness is always going to go through its phase to ultimate, resolution. I don't have to. It's like I don't have to do it, but I'm going to do it because I want to do it because it's fun for me. I don't have to anymore. It's not like it's my job and I've got this duty. I could fucking sit in a cave the next 80 years and do nothing and meditate, and it's still fine. But it's like it's not my excitement. My excitement is going out there and doing talks and waking people up. So that's what I'm going to do. But not because what I'm saying. It's different. It's because it's a choice. Because it's exciting. And if it's exciting to go sit in a cave for 10 years. I will go sit in a cave for 10 years if that's really what calls me. But it's just I know myself and I want to get out there and do the stuff.
You're into the territory there of chewing on these two ends of a polarity. And of course you can know it's one thing, but of course you can see also back when, and I'm starting to form a bit of a theory now that this is part of sort of just the evolution of how consciousness works lately. But back when, I mean, really, you go through the old literature, I challenge you to find anyone saying that the Bodhisattva and the Ahrat are polar expressions. I haven't even come across Advaita teachers saying that in history. Really. The view there even is, at such a moment, you are the Ahrat or you are the Bodhisattva, one or the other. And there's lots of schools that used to make you sign Bodhisattva vows before they teach you. So you promise that even if you don't feel like it afterwards, you will teach. You will try to be useful.
I see why they make you sign that. I can understand very much why.
Yeah. And of course, you can also see where it doesn't fucking help.
No.
If you brought it for it to help,
Oh, that's funny. Wow, that's so fascinating.
The Ahrat's not going to be bound by that.
No, Of course not.
No. So in my experience, it's been a polarity, and my teaching comes out of largely the integration of that. I mean, the first students I had, they were the ones that really evoked it in me, both the Ahrat and the Bodhisattva, and got the polarity to kind of wash away and let it be one. And it's still, you know.
Hang on, you
that
broke up
was a
there.
very divided old polarity. Oh, sorry, I'm
your
saying that
connection's a
used to
little-
be a very divided.
So you said, hang on,
going
it did for a bit, but I think we'll be okay. But just repeat that bit. So your students were you were in a place where you weren't sure, and your students were pulling you towards being at service as a bodhisattva. Is that what you said?
Very, very much.
Okay.
Yeah, that's out of them. Yes, I mean they enjoyed the Ahrat qualities of me. You know, Ahrats can be fun, but for me the two weren't really separate. You know, but they did have to come in from their polarities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, not so much come in. The tantric approach to doing polarities is different from the monastic. The monastic is you try and get to the truth by not going out into the polarities. So, like, take love, hate. You try and reduce your love and reduce your hate, you know, to find the cool center. Meanwhile, what the Tantrika does is, you know, goes deeply in the love, goes deeply in the hate, until a moment comes when he's switching so quick between the love and the hate that he notices they're the same thing and they're both present. Mm-hmm. And when they're both present, that's the start of integration. Mm-hmm. As one, you know, both present as one. And I mean, just you look in history, Bodhisattvas and Ahrats, man, they've been separate since forever. There's no stories of anyone claiming integration. Mm-hmm. If you read the Bodhisattvas, you'll get the idea that if someone claimed integration, they would be very upset with them. Mm-hmm. You get the idea that Ahrats would laugh at them. Mm-hmm. You know, and they didn't like each other. I mean, Bodhidharma, he said it's not a sin to kill an Ahrat.
Oh, it's not a sin? Is that right?
No, you can kill them. And the Ahrat goes, yeah, it isn't. You know, no big deal. Like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Bodhisattva will say, pull the trigger. Pull the fucking trigger.
So it's interesting. And I think this is why this was a dilemma for me, because I know actually deep down I'm a bodhisattva, and I've known for quite some time that I've come here to help other people. And there's been many, many signs about this. And that's just my nature. It's always been my nature to help other beings. And it doesn't change when I went through the death. It's the only thing I really wanted, is to help everybody else wake up. But so that's why I was concerned, because when I was in this phase of 3-4 months of just, what's the point? What's the fucking point of anything? That was disturbing to me, because I'm just like, no, I know I came here to wake people. I know on a soul level, I know why I'm here, and yet I don't give a fuck. That's why it was quite disturbing, and I wanted to talk to you about it, because I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
And you know that view's not wrong.
No, it's not wrong. It's just what you want to do. That's the interesting thing. I was reading this book by this one guy who claims enlightenment, and something was wrong. I was reading the book, and I'm like, yes, he's speaking some, but not from the highest truth that I know. You know, I don't think he's really been there, and I muscle tested where he's at, and he hasn't been all the way. But it was good, but something was wrong, and he really doesn't give a shit about helping people, and there's no point, and blah blah blah. And the way now I'm understanding, he's not the bodhisattva, he's the other one. Now I get it.
Classic Ahrat.
Now I get it. Now I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm listening to him. I'm like, what are you talking about? What? Yes, you sort of are from that space, but you're not. Something is very wrong here.
But your other level of perception totally gets him. You see.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's amazing. 100%. There's a point you don't even want to go. You can't be peeling a potato. What's the point?
the big, how to say, the monastic schools would all tell you to nurture the one. They tell you all, feeding the wolf stories about nurturing the bodhisattva in you and killing off the Ahrat. That's what they'd want you to do, all the monastic schools. Except the ones that concentrate on producing Ahrats. They just say congratulations. Mm-hmm. But the challenge I suggest, the tantric level game of it, and where you've already kind of been thrown into it already, is the Advaita of it, the taking it to the truth of it's undivided. There's no division between the Bodhisattva and the Ahrat. They are one expression. And the challenge of, I can highly recommend taking that on. I thoroughly enjoy, because I get to have I get to engage as the Bodhisattva with the spirit of the Ahrat. And it sounds incompatible, but it's one thing. I mean, you're feeling it with me. How do you find when I rap to you about this kind of stuff? You know, I'm not trying to encourage any angel in you, or put down any demon, or encourage any demon and put down any angel. I'm very happy with the angel and demon stuff.
You know, I'm starting to realize something. Yeah, in this phase, there was a big part of me that wanted to run away, just to be alone, like run away, get a cabin somewhere, give away everything. I mean, dude, I was at a point, I swear to God, 3 weeks ago, I was going to get everything, all my money, my businesses, everything, give it all away, take enough money to go rent a cabin and just fuck right up. Tell everybody, I don't know when I'm coming back. I have no fucking idea. And when I take everything I have, if I come back and you want to share, fine. If not, that's okay too. I'll be fine. And just fuck off to a cabin. And I almost did it. I swear to God, I was looking at my assets. I'm like, I could just give it all away. I don't give a shit. None of it matters. And I just need to go be with myself. Fuck everybody. I was this close. And something in me was like, don't do it. Don't do it. You're going to be okay. Just wait and just spend a little time alone and breathe and just all right. And then just on the last few days, I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm going to go kick ass. I'm going to do things. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do my perp. I'm going to live it. It's going to be great. And when I need to go off for a few weeks or whatever, I will. And I'll go off for a month and I'll do a meditation in a cave and it'll be great. But I'm here to do some shit and I'm going to do it. But my God, I almost left the world. I swear to God, I almost just fucked right off. It was a close one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Ahrat again.
Yeah. And one thing I have learned that I can tell everybody, and I think you'll agree with, if you have a really big awakening, take a few weeks off, mate. Just at least take a couple of months and chill the fuck out. Because, you know, I was so gung-ho to be the Bodhisattva. I just went and started doing tours and I helped a lot of people and it was beautiful, but it kind of fucked me up in a way where afterwards I was like, I don't want to do anything. You know what I mean? So take a vacation. That's my advice for anybody out there. Yeah.
What gets you there is there's a certain poison, because you can see anything that takes you away from the truth, anything that takes you away from awareness is going to be a poison for you now. So there's a certain poison in motivating people, because you get to see who they are not. You see not their truth if you motivate them. The moment you take your motivation off, the moment the motivation stops, they slide right back to the energy level that is their natural energy level. You can push them you can motivate them. You can even get them going self-motivating. You've done it to yourself too. But take off the motivation and it just slides right back. So the change you create when you motivate people, it's all very visual. It can be quite dramatic and it's very easy to believe it. And it's not change. It's not movement. All you're seeing is who they are not. You can say, I'm seeing who they would be if they had more chi. Yeah, well, unless you're going to actually go and like kill 3 people close to them or something to give them that chi, you know.
As in the influence of that people, those
and
people
then you're still supplying a motivation. And then supplying a motivation.
When you say kill those people, do you mean that murder them so they steal those people's chi, or bad influences in their lives would be taken away and then they'll have more chi because they're not being dragged down? Which do you mean?
In that particular case, murder a few people in their family close to them, so that concentrates chi in them.
Oh,
that's one way to. Yeah.
So like a vampire.
Also, in conventional terms, is you give them a motivation called revenge. Most humans turn on a lot of chi when they've got revenge going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the dark side, that's about the most you can get someone's chi going. That's why all the Eastern revenge movie stories, they haven't got anything bigger than revenge to.
what you're saying brings us into another really big point and fascinating question, which is, and this is where I'm at. I don't know how to teach this stuff, awakening. I have no idea. I have no fucking clue. That's the thing. I have no clue. What can I tell you? I could talk about it. I could tell you the truth. I could tell you, you could blow your head off with a shotgun right now, and you nothing will change. You're still all that is forever. And I can tell you certain things, but I don't know what to do to get you there, man. You know what I mean? And it's and
I just told you that by way of saying you couldn't have taught yourself this.
No way.
Right. That really rubs it in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doesn't mean you can't teach. Doesn't mean you don't get to be of use. Doesn't mean you can't be the Bodhisattva. But it does mean something you have to look square in the eye and take on the chin and whatever else and just handle it, because it's true. Here it comes. Around the school, the saying, the way we have it is, you don't get to teach your highest understanding. And if we're particular about it, actually, never mind your highest understanding, at a certain level of the path, and it's not that high, it's where everyone gets to pretty quick, but there's a certain level you reach where actually you're in that territory where you can't usefully teach the realizations you're having. For the reason I explained to you earlier, that even you yourself, you wouldn't be able to have helped yourself. In those areas. It doesn't mean you can't guide people towards those areas. Doesn't mean that you can't do like what I try to do a little bit for you. Just help someone, see the space, find a perspective, see where a thing fits in a little bit. You can do that. That's not teaching. That's not putting them into the experience. Yeah. And of course, some of these things you can evoke Satori. There are techniques, but in general, the way to be useful, what I strive for, is you look where they are, you do your good honest best to see if you can find some memory, some resonance, some date of your own life and your own calendar back when you faced what they have to face. And if you can do that, then what would have helped you? Because you can see what would have helped you. Very often because you did get helped with something, and that's probably the best thing. Or maybe you know a better way now, but at least it gives you a starting point. Then you're teaching what they need to learn. They'll have their insights. You can guide them towards the kind of space and openness in themselves that can encompass and handle those insights should they come. That you can do. You can give them some hints of what's to come, but too much of a hint, enough of a hint that you yourself would have gone, oh, woo-woo bullshit. Well, they're going to just go woo-woo bullshit. Yeah. And they should, because it is woo-woo bullshit at that level. You're breaking, you're trying to teach your highest understanding. So it also means your highest understanding, a lot of people go the other way. A lot of people who are teachers, they have this level of realization or something around it, and then they're desperate to teach it. And then the students don't get it and don't get it and don't get it. And guess what? They doubt it and doubt it and doubt it, and they lose it. Because it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by a bunch of turkeys. But the point is, if you don't get to teach your highest understanding, that means your highest understanding is not something you have to try and put into a lesson. Your highest understanding is something you have to understand. It frees it from the zone of students and interactions and so on. It's your highest understanding. Yeah.
So the question becomes,
your highest understanding should progress. Yes, indeed. Good. That's the territory for it. It's not for teaching. It can look very at odds. You know how it is. You've seen enough inversions of truth to know along the path there's many inversions of truth. There's very many inversions of the model of how you think it works. It has to flip upside down every now and again. From that source perspective, you can see that kind of, that's just like layers of an onion going out from there. But in terms of the journey to understanding, no, you know, there's limited areas and limited bits of the territory where you can be useful. And you can where you can be useful, but as I say, the best method I've found for looking for those things is, where was I? What did I need? And I work with women more so where there's differences of males and females. I've got to go, okay, what woman did I work with or was I around that managed this step that this one faces? What helped her get through that? You know, I've lived a life close enough to the classic sufferings of women in the modern world, I'm sure, just to give me that perspective, that, you know, I can get some sense of where they're at with what they're facing, and give them some hints. But I don't get to teach my higher understanding.
No, I have talked about it in some podcasts and things, and I think it just makes for entertainment listening for some. But it's like, you know, when normal people, you know, just nice humans who just aren't on the path, listen to Jim Carrey, they think he's out of his fucking mind. And I listen to him now and like, no, he just had, you know, he's had some experiences, and he's woke up on some level. But most people just sounds like crazy talk, you know. It just sounds like crazy talk.
That's where I found the Eastern stuff so useful, because they've got an old enough tradition with it that it's not such a freaky thing. And they've got some overview and perspective on it, you know, and there's effectively warnings, like, not that there's anything wrong with being Jim Carrey or handling it the way he's not handling it, but, you know, you see also the troubles of, and the usefulness of guidance around a thing. I mean, but then Jim Carrey, I mean, you know, he's also, I don't know, to the extent that he's the Bodhisattva, that's his suffering, that he's failing to communicate. And to the extent that he's an Ahrat, he's just amused that they don't get it. And who knows, it may be that the integration, that the both of them being simultaneous, is how it goes these days. So you may well be feeling a good bit of both.
One of these
notion to me. Had that come up before?
Yeah, this is a fascinating conversation for me too. Like I even though, you know, I've read spiritual books and done plant medicines and done meditations and prayed and had direct, you know, channeled and had source talk to me and just give me a lot of stuff, but I never really, you know, went to the classical. I've never read the Bhagavad Gita. I've never read all the Indian, you know, I haven't. I just went straight to God. Like, I want to know what the fuck is going on. I want to wake up. And the more as I had that intention, boy, it's just started happening. I just looked everywhere I could. There's no specific, you know, the life itself was my teacher, all of it. And that's the thing I tell people when they ask, what's the thing? And I'm just like, the thing is to want to wake the fuck up. That's the thing. Go for it. That's it. The universe will send you. And, you know, when I popped this last time, I immediately knew all of the teachers in my life that were pretty high level. I knew all of them and where they were at and their level of understanding, all of it. I just understood, and I called them and I just started speaking them. They're like, oh, okay, okay. They knew what had happened. But I just knew. And it's weird because all these teachers were high level, were in my life and started showing up and started helping me when I needed them. And I wasn't even aware. Some of them were quite fully awake. I didn't even know until I popped. And then I'm like, oh, fuck. I know all these masters. I know literally more than a handful of fully awake masters. It's just insane. That's crazy. How many people do you know? Well, you maybe, but anyone else could name 6 people that have awakened. That's crazy, and they're my friends. That's ridiculous.
Me and damn few, we might discuss, you could say, our condition, but we don't rave about it much, or we don't put it out there on the front of our advertising billboards. You know?
Yeah. Nope, because you'd be. It's not good. It's not a good thing. It's funny. There's another thing. It's a fascinating topic. You know, I thought enlightenment was it just one day it happens and it's over. No, it's layers and layers. And I think one of my teachers says actually there's 4 enlightenments, and I've never heard this before till he told me, and I was like, that's fascinating. I don't know if you've thought about this or if this resonates, but I'm going to share with you what he said to me. He said there's 4,
Yeah.
and so for example, the first one I had it was the pineal gland, which was that was the Buddhist, right? The Buddhist, that was the God realization. It was just God and me, but it was all God, and it was like holy shit. And he says, so that's in their, thing. And then the next one I had was the Christ. That was, by the way, I failed to mention it was Christ consciousness that spoke through me as I was speaking those words to Paul as I had the realization. It was Christ, and my teacher got fucking blasted, and he shot up. He had crazy shit happen to him after that as well. So it was for both of us, and he's my spiritual dad, so he got to witness me waking up as Christ spoke to him through me. So it was a bit of it was quite a day. So he says the second enlightenment is the Christian one is the heart opening. So that's the Christ, right? So if that one happens and you're a Christian, they go, you're enlightened. The third one, he says, which I have not had, he says it's the Muslim, it's the throat open, the power of speech. He says that's the Muslim enlightenment. And then the final one, and he says it happens in this order. The final one is the Indian. It's the crown. And he says, if that one pops and you've had all 4, then you're cooked. You're done. That's the full on, you're done. You're finished. Does that make sense? Have you heard of this? It's happening in these order.
That's nice. There's another perspective on it that I quite like as well. Also, Sadhguru, you know the fellow?
I know him. Yeah. He's big on YouTube.
One of his videos on like levels of enlightenment, and I liked his description because it was more about, as you know, from your Satori into there, it's not that you're enlightened, it's just it is. Yeah. And though he talks about, as Asha talked about, everyone who jumps in the ocean gets equally wet. It's like everyone that's actually hit that point, you can't really distinguish or evaluate between their experiences. But if you take the notice, you're getting equally wet. I mean, this is not me, not Asha, but everyone that jumps in the swimming pool gets equally wet, but that doesn't make everyone a diving instructor. Yeah. And with Sadhguru, it was that kind of definition difference, as in the more preparation you have, the more it lands in good ground, well-prepared ground, this experience, the more it then matures well, and so on. That, we could say, especially big master, big scale Bodhisattva kind of enlightenment in the expression of it, the ones that go to there. There's a very definitely different quality to that, to much smaller, closer working, small group kind of teachers of my kind of flavor. And then there's another shift to those who don't get into any kind of teaching and who are just blown away, like poor old Jim Carrey, and so it's more about the ground and the preparation. That's the qualitative difference. That all that, and the nice thing with that is you can make it up. Like, as long as you don't, like, you go right to the edge. The big trick you realize is when you're in a very polarized state, if you can hang on to enough of an awareness that this is a polarized state and the other polarity is true too, then it prevents you from, like, doing things that are inconvenient to you.
Such as?
Such as giving away all your money and possessions when you're really hitting the moment in the Bodhisattva or the Ahrat. Either of them could do it at either end of the polarity. And maybe it's all going to The more you're attached to it, the more likely it is to go. The less attached to you, the more likely it is to stick around.
Yeah. It's been really crazy the last couple of years, I'll tell you. Yeah. It's weird because even when you're seeking so much, there's a little part of you that doesn't think you're ever really going to find out. And when you do find out, boy, it's a shocker. It really is. It's like, holy fuck. But yeah, you summed it up. When it happens, there's nobody there. That's what it is. It's the realization that there was never anybody there. You were just telling yourself a story of a person and a personality and all these things. They're all made up. So all that is just is all that is. And you were somehow, it's like you had a cloaking field on you that managed to, have you not experienced that. And actually in the state, it's a shock that you ever could not be in the state, because that's what is. It's quite a miracle that people could live their entire lives and not experience what is.
Yeah, you might find this interesting. The little thing. This is the difference of Western ego. Western ego basically just, what does it mean? It means self-regard and striving for upward in the social ladder, positional thing kind of stuff. That's what we think of more or less as ego, Freud style. When Buddha talks about ego, he's not talking about that at all. That's completely irrelevant. He's talking about the illusion that I am this being doing all this clever stuff. Yeah, me, me, doing being. And so what is the ego? But it's not, and you have it. Understand it's an evolved thing. So it doesn't mean it's dysfunctional. It can be useful, evolved things, The function of where it comes from, what that thing we call ego really is part of the mechanism of the being, is it needs an explainer for the world and a guesser at the future. Something to explain sensation and what comes in through the nervous system, and make out of that, hopefully, useful and functional, productive guesses as the future. Productive like getting laid, eating, finding a place to sleep, being warm, whatever, And the explainer makes a very common, usual error. It might not even be an error. It could be a correctly evolved part of its programming. But it takes on the notion of when the body moves and does a thing, it takes on the notion, oh, I'm doing that. Why did that happen? Oh, because I did that, and because I did that. And it's wrong, and it's a shitty way of storytelling, but it's easy. It's very easy to explain the world in those terms and navigate according to that. And then it's had a whole journey truths that are quite different from that. But the ego is the one that does this explaining. It's the explainer. It's got a useful function. The error comes when it explains everything by it doing everything. It's the explainer. That's all. The arising is still the arising. The thoughts happen, the movements happen. And this brings it to also when you feel that urge of, that thing of it's the sort of Bodhisattva urge to sit on top of Mount Spiritual, right on the top, and not bother with another thing. It's the other end of that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's quite a thing. For a few days there, right after, there was things. I remember one time I woke up and I opened my eyes, and it was just presence. It was just awareness, but there was nothing, absolute silence, no mind, no thinking, no thinker. And then I just knew what was about to happen, because the body needed to pee. So suddenly I'm going and I'm walking and I'm peeing, whatever, but everything was just happening. And there was no person there to decide anything. It was very peaceful. Things are just happening. And eventually, very slowly over weeks, eventually the mind popped in and go, well, you still have to run your business, or people are going to lose their jobs. You don't want to let, so you got to do the thing. All right, I better do. You're going to have to pay that bill, otherwise, they're going to cut the thing off. So you better pay the bill. And then it's like, all right, well, and then slowly, but it's a very different feel to it. So you know what I mean? It's very different. It's like things that practically have to happen, but these other thoughts that are just completely pointless. They're just, there's no need. So it's a lot quieter than it used to be. That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, what a trip.
Yeah. 2013 it was that I saw you. Yeah.
Yeah, we met. It's weird that we haven't actually physically met since then. We did a live stream on one of my events a year after that, or 2 years after that. And we had a Skype call a year or two ago. It's strange.
I know. I saw back then things were on the move.
Back in 2013?
Yeah, things were on the move then. You'll see. They're more than the roots of this. If you look for the roots of your experience, you'll see more of, they were well going already then.
They were. What's that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see it retrospectively.
Yeah, it was definitely,
Someone who's there now, you'll see where they're, you'll see where they, you'll have a sense where they're going.
Yeah. Such a random thing, meeting at a party in India. It's quite interesting. Well, so that was those were mainly the bits I wanted to discuss. I feel like we could go on forever. Really, there's no. It's quite a discussion. This, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but a couple of hours of me is a bit of overload for most people. Now you handle it well.
Oh yeah, no, I'm wonderful. It's c'est fantastique, I would say. Yeah, I think that'll be really useful. I think people really enjoy that. So yeah, give yourself a little plug. Like, where are you? Tell us about your book. Is wonderful. I've read it. I think it's super great. I'd like to reread it actually, now that I'm coming from a different space. But just tell people if they want to read your book, or if they want to find you, or what you're about. Let people know.
Well, Rahaysa. It's like an A before the word Rahaysa on Twitter. And currently, I think with the virus, China virus, whatever virus, human virus, animal virus we're having now, that thing. It's I made a tweet recently with it, sort of the free to download, or audio book of that, free to download. People might enjoy some of that. AdvaitTantra.com. There's not a lot up there. If you hunt down the Advait Tantra School, ADVAIT, Advait Tantra School on Facebook, there's a group there, and do answer the question. Say, heard you on this show and whatever, and then okay, I let people in. I don't let anyone in that doesn't answer the question. The question is, what contact have you had with us? Hearing me is some contact. And how to say, Tantrika's, how does it? In terms of the Bodhisattva Ahrat game, how to say, I've got to be findable, and I'm findable. You go looking for me, you'll find me on YouTube, on Twitter, whatever. I'm findable. That's the extent that I'm supposed to meet things at. Very different from, I have a message that I have to take to the culture. No, I don't. The culture's doing just fine. I don't mess with it at all. My book, yes, the Rocky Horror Tantra book, that you can Google and you'll track me down via that too. And again, the title, the cover of that book. I was a graphic designer for a number of years, and you'll never believe a graphic designer had anything to do with that cover. Because that cover is designed to scare away everyone who's trying to take this topic seriously. And everyone who thinks Tantra must be all flowers and unicorns and greater bliss. No, don't want them to read it.
I haven't looked at the cover in a long time. I'm gonna look at it now just to see. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, unfindable, and there's enough clues.
Yeah, well, it's just it's just bloody, isn't it?
Well, the
Just a
most
little-
fun thing people get to do at the moment is come to Little Tibet, volunteer, help me build the place up on a mountain in a desert, and we have great fun. Yeah.
It's still on my list of things to do to come visit one day.
Yeah, come quick before we finish building, because then we're going to be charging big, expensive money for retreats, but they'll also be fun.
Yeah, but you're not going to charge me for a retreat. I'm your friend.
Oh, probably not. Probably not.
I'll come and help. I'll sit around and just smile at people and spread my positive.
No, come help. Come help. I've got a container to move and steel to weld.
We'll see. Let's see what happens with the globe in the next year or two. Yeah. So very good. But I'll put the links up if you're listening on not on YouTube. I will go on YouTube and I'll put all the links. And it's fun. You can see his face, even though it's a little bit choppy. I think the audio was pretty good most of the way through. So I'll put all the links to the book. It's a great book. It's got some really great exercises. It's not just one of those books you read and go, "Oh, it's interesting." It actually gives you exercises that are practical and they're pretty powerful. So yeah, it's an experience reading the book as well if you take it a little seriously. And if you're in South Africa, or you feel like, well, right now nobody's flying anywhere. This is during the heat of the peak of the COVID. Actually, I can't even say it's the peak because we don't know how bad it's going to get. But the world is basically on lockdown right now, so probably nobody's flying to South Africa at the moment. But at some point in the future,
tickets are cheaper. You don't get quarantined if you don't have a fever.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get on a plane, but for those of you who are inspired to go down and hang out, that would be fun. And so I'm gonna keep doing these bad boys, and we'll get you on again sometime. It's really fun hanging out and just having the spiritual woo chats, which a tiny population, tiny percent of the population are very, very interested in, and most people are absolutely not interested in.
Well, let's hope the right ones find it and the wrong ones don't, huh?
Yeah, that's it. It always seems to work out that way anyway. Okay, so with that, let's say goodbye to the world, and thanks everybody for being here. God bless you, and see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
I don't usually promote anything on the Woke as Fuck podcast, but just in case any of you humans is into personal development, pushing your comfort zones, doing things that are just uncomfortable, going deeper, and finding what have you got going on inside that's blocking you from really living your life more authentically, more joyfully, all that kind of stuff. I do have an online community that's pretty epic. We're doing some really interesting things, some very interesting programs coming up, all about self-expression, pushing through your fears, and just really manifesting the life that you want to manifest. So if you're interested in joining a really epic community and just checking out my work, my official work, not this crazy podcast that's just fun for me, if you go on YouTube and click, all the links will be there, but it's basically, if you go to infinitemansummit.com/online, my community's there and you can see what I'm all about. So if you're interested, do check it out. Sending you mucho kisses. I don't know why I made a cow sound there. That was just totally random.